want to talk about the Singapore airport. Do we have the Singapore airport video? All right. I've been traveling a lot in the last couple of weeks, and I can assure you that none of the ones in the United States look like that. That's
Yeah, the Atlanta airport does have trains, but not like that.
Yeah, I've been to the Atlanta airport many times.
You got to go to Epcot or something to get anything remotely looking like that in America.
Airports look very nice in Singapore. I think we could all agree on that starting point.
Yes.
All right. So let's see what thought, because you might hear, you might see that. You might have a few different thoughts. You might think, hey, I want to go visit Singapore. Or if your mind drifts toward politics, you might think, man, I wish we spent some money on building nice airports in this country. Matt Walsh's mind went somewhere else. Do we have the Matt Walsh tweet? All right. This is Matt Walsh's take on that video. He's quote tweeted the tweet where we got that video from. He says, Singapore is able to have nice things in part because they execute drug dealers by hanging and arrest even petty vandals and thieves and beat them with a cane until they bleed. We don't have nice things because we aren't willing to do what is required to maintain them. All right. Andy, you're muted.
I wasn't saying anything. I was just kind of in awe of that tweet.
Yeah. We would have really nice airports in the United States if only we were willing to beat and kill enough petty criminals. Now, I lack Matt's imagination. I don't really understand what the connection between those two things is supposed to be. Because it seems to me that what we actually have here are two separate facts about Singapore. One is that they don't have anything like the Eighth Amendment, which is the one that prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. And the other is that they spend a lot of money on airports. And it's not obvious to me why this should be a package deal. So I pointed this out to Matt on Twitter. I said, well, all right. So this is, I guess, being a little bit unkind here. I said, this guy is such a caricature of a conservative. He sees a video of nice things built by generous public investment and concludes that if we only beat and killed enough petty criminals, the nice things would, pop into existence as a divine reward for our righteousness. And this angered Matt, so he responds, says, no, Ben. The logic is that our nice things wouldn't turn into crime-ridden, shit-covered hellscapes if we appropriately punish people who made them that way. Let me know if you need any more help understanding basic concepts. And then in his follow-up to that tweet, he says, what? How could punishing criminals result in nicer and safer environments? That's absurd, lol. That's all in quotation marks. I don't think that's actually a quote. I don't remember saying that. My God, we are surrounded by the dumbest collection of oblivious morons to ever walk the earth. I gotta admit, I still don't get it.
See, Ben, what you're missing is that when you do all these drug busts, all that money that they raid, that's what's going to the airports.
There we go. Okay.
That's the connection. So,
Okay.
You turn them upside down a little bit, you rough them up, and you get a concourse, you get a monorail that looks like that in your airport.
Yeah, I mean, remember when I think it was LaGuardia used to look exactly like that, right? But then, during the Dinkins era, there's just so many criminals that just tore down the monorail, and I mean, it's just so. I mean,
Newark.
They were camping out in the They were using the monorail to sleep. It was
the graffiti. The graffiti was. It was beautiful graffiti. But, it's a lot of great art was coming out of the airport.
All the fentanyl addicts were swimming in that fountain.
Yeah, a lot of great artists holed up in warehouses and inside that. No, the thing is like you could have that argument about street safety, right? Yeah. Which I think his argument is a bad one there, but it makes a lot more sense, at least, right. Which is like there's criminals on the street and we get the criminals off the street. But we're talking about a fucking airport. There's ways to keep criminals or like.
Well, I would also, I would point out one way to keep criminals out of an airport is if they don't have a ticket, then they can't get into the main part of the airport. Like that's how airports work. That you have to have a ticket to get out of. If you don't have the ticket, they don't let you pass security. So, assuming that the monorail and the fountain, nowadays, we're past security, I think maybe we've solved the problem right here, just with existing practices.
Yeah, I'm curious if it would be impossible to name like any beautiful airports that are like surrounded by semi-bad neighborhoods. I'm sure that there's no. I can't reel off any off the top of my head, but I think that might question whether his philosophy about this is actually true.
Yeah, because there are two issues here. One, as you say, is there's the like Matt Walsh platform for safe streets, and then there's what the fuck does this have to do with the airport, right? Like, and
I did not see any hanging bodies in the airport, which from his description, it sounded like like it'd be the Red Keep in Game of Thrones after Joffrey decapitated everybody, which I imagine that would lead to like public works. If we didn't have the Purple Wedding, we would have seen Joffrey's monorail.
How do you think the WPA was funded? It was public hangings that you had to pay a nickel to attend. Yes, they're charging people. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it's a tax.
I would point out on the Matt Walsh program for safe streets that let's. So if we look at that again, he says, there's the. He talks about crime-ridden, shit-covered hellscapes. And that got me thinking about which places in the world are and aren't crime-ridden, shit-covered hellscapes. And I think so that's how he's going to characterize the United States. We could argue if there's an element of hyperbole there, but fine. There are many very deeply dysfunctional things about the United States. And there is a lot of crime by global standards. That's true. But then there are all these other countries. In fact, it might surprise you to learn that Singapore and the United States are not the only two countries in the world. There are like a bunch of others. And so you have Norway, for example, where famously they more or less don't have the death penalty. They're technically, I think it's on the books for like treason and one or two other things, but they haven't actually used it since the end of World War II. And they essentially don't have life imprisonment either. Anders Breivik is going to get out of prison one day unless they change the law. And notoriously, Norwegian prisons are not like American prisons. They if you look at pictures inside Norwegian prisons, they look like dorm rooms, and frankly, on the nicer end of dorm rooms in the United States, right? So it's like notoriously a much more lenient criminal justice system, much more humane criminal justice system than we have in the United States, and yet, I think Oslo is not typically regarded as a shit-covered, crime-ridden hellscape. I think maybe is actually, places like Norway and Sweden and Finland and Denmark. I don't want to romanticize them too much. They're complex societies with lots of problems, but I think those are probably the countries in the world that are the least like crime-ridden, shit-covered hellscapes. And that suggests that there are, alternate way, like, I mean, look, I think that when the criminal justice system was closest to what Matt likes, in like the 19th century, I think we're actually much more of a crime-ridden, shit-covered hellscape. All of which suggests to me that you can in fact have safer streets without beating people with canes until they bleed and executing people who are busted for possession with intent to distribute, and all that stuff that Matt Walsh likes, but also again, fucking separate question, right? Like, you could have, as Jake says, a not great neighborhood that still has a very nice looking airport in it. Like that's, like, literally, like, it doesn't really matter what your drug laws are or how harsh your criminal penalties are. Like, the way you get a nice airport is by spending some money on building a nice airport. And just to really bring home the point, Andy gathered for us some images of Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, which is not one of the places in the world that's known for having the harshest drug laws. And, it's not Singapore, but man, that is a nice looking airport. That is actually a much nicer looking airport than ones that I'm used to seeing in the United States.
I was just there. I was there, like, let's see, July. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Less creepy than the Singapore one, honestly. I'm actually, if I had to guess by airport which society canes people till they bleed, I would kind of guess the first one. I would prefer it to the Newark airport, but
it's amazing that the only like statist solution that they can come up with is purely punitive or purely sort of authoritarian, fascistic. Like, the state can only be used to discipline. It can't be used to actually provide for any sort of like, well, in this case, it kind of is related to like state providing material, actual things for people. That might help with, crime and, fewer, unhoused people in the airport or whatever. But also just the notion that you can actually spend public resources on a public good, and that like what's going to happen, someone is going to come in and just, it doesn't make any sense.
It's to your point. No, it's just the thing is about street crime is I think that there's like a very base logic in, okay, there's a criminal and arrest the criminal. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that. It's more a lack of, let's say, long range vision to see what made the criminal a criminal in the first place. Right? It's treating the symptom, not the disease, I would say, of crime, right? It's just throwing people in jail. But this, to your point, Russell, it's like completely left field versus just like spend fucking money on the airport. Like, it's like they can't even envision any sort of solution, to your point. I think that's spot on. It's like it almost makes zero sense. And then when you call them out, he calls you the stupidest person. It's like what you're saying is so outlandish. I feel like the onus is on you to explain how like executing people is going to lead to a nicer airport. You know what I mean? It's a lack of imagination for sure.
We were going to put the fountain and the monorail in, but then we realized that, all these people are going to be hanging out here and it's going to be a real people are going to get things stolen. So we decided not to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And like, look, clearly, the reason why, like some of the things that Matt will say when he's explaining his position, he'll talk about the fentanyl epidemic and all the people who die of overdoses, and all that's true, right? Like that's very real. But also, like, why is it that you suppose that's happening now? Why is it that you suppose that's happening so much more in like the Rust Belt, than it is in other parts of the country? I mean, this is like it just, his view of the world is so weird to me that way, right? It's like because it's not that we just sort of, that like, the United, they like American politicians just decided to be hippies about, enforcing laws, and like that's, and that like all this stuff sprung up because like by global standards, the United States has an unusually harsh criminal justice system, I mean, compared to many, economically comparably developed countries. We got all that stuff because of deindustrialization and like deep despair and this kind of broken social contract that like, the new generation was going to have a better life than the one before it and all that stuff. I mean, I'm not breaking any new ground here. I think this is actually pretty uncontroversial, that like, this is why that happened, and yes, you could absolutely solve those things, with different, public policies and again, I don't, I don't actually believe that, the joke we've made here a million times before is that if you think that the Nordic countries got that stuff because they're so innately culturally nice, you should watch the Northmen. But they got those things because of socialist political parties allied to strong unions, and like you could get the same result here. Right. Like, and that's a much bigger political disagreement I have with Matt Walsh. But like, even if you completely disagree with all that, right. Even if you think like, no, we can't, it's, I don't know, Norwegians are just genetically social democrats or whatever, and like, we're not. So you just can't have that. It's like, okay, give me that you could just decide to spend money on the airport. Like that at least is surely within the realm of public policy.
It's pretty impressive for Matt Walsh, I'll say. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is.
Yeah. That one that's more of a head scratcher than usual, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will also say, just for the record, I'll just, before we switch gears, I will just be a debate bro about this for 10 seconds. He says in that, at the end of his first tweet to me, he says, let me know if you need any more help understanding basic concepts. So I am happy to receive instruction on basic concepts anytime, any place. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm down. You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive postgames on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.